Y'all keep moving. I'm gonna try to talk to him while you're doing your thing. Hey, what does she drive? A Taurus? What color is it? Silver? Marion, he's advising that she's driving a silver Ford Taurus. That's all the information I'm gonna be able to get out of him.
Copy. Stop.
294, 57, 51 ahead.
Sure. Turn around. Spin. Put both hands up, face away. Backwards.
I think the detective was on his way to him, and I think the LP's on his way to him.
Is there anything you can tell me about what's happening?
Is there anything more?
That you can tell me about what's happening?
On the morning of September 16th, 2022, it was around 8:03 a.m. in Ocala, Florida, when a 911 dispatcher answered a call that immediately felt wrong. A man shouted through the line, pleading for help, saying that his adult daughter, who still lived with the family, had just assaulted him and his wife. The detective could barely get an address before the phone abruptly cut off. With only a little information and a growing sense of urgency, officers didn't wait.
He's advising that she's driving a silver Ford Taurus. That's all the information I'm gonna be able to get out of him because they're loading him up in an ambulance now. Right now, both subjects are somewhat conscious, but not looking good.
Unfortunately, 74-year-old Richard lost the battle for his life in the hospital. Only his wife barely survived. As the deputies searched the surrounding area, they focused on one detail Richard had managed to give them, a description of his daughter's car. It didn't take long before they found her and placed her under arrest, but an arrest only answered who. What investigators needed next was why. And what she would later say inside the interrogation room would leave everyone stunned.
He wanted me to move so that another one of my brothers who has a job, who has income, can stay there. And I'm just, let's take the
Richard and Sally Langer had built a quiet, structured life over decades. They were a married couple with a small family, known to neighbors as reserved, private, and routine-oriented. Their home in Ocala wasn't a place of chaos. It was stable and predictable. Richard was described as firm but involved, while Sally was seen as steady and supportive. Together, they had raised their children with clear expectations, believing structure was the foundation of security. Christina Adams, their adult daughter, had always stood slightly apart. Growing up, people who knew her described her as headstrong and emotionally intense, someone who struggled with boundaries but wanted to be understood on her own terms. Christina returned to her parents' home, and once again, the lines between past and present blurred. Living under the same roof as Richard and Sally brought old dynamics back to the surface: authority, dependence, and unresolved tension. To the outside world, it still looked like a family helping their adult child get back on her feet. Inside the house, however, patience was running out. By the time September 2022 arrived, the family was no longer moving forward together. What remained was a fragile coexistence, one that looked calm from the outside, but was quietly coming apart. For Richard and Sally, the solution had become clear. Christina needed to move out. For Christina, that conversation felt final. The tension inside the house boiled over. An argument turned violent. Richard and Sally were attacked inside their own home, both suffering multiple stab wounds. Despite his injuries, Richard managed to call 911. Before he could give more details, the call abruptly ended. Before losing consciousness, he gave dispatchers one last crucial detail: the color and type of car Christina was likely driving. That information went out immediately. While deputies secured the scene, others began scanning nearby roads. Christina, meanwhile, believed she had already escaped the consequences. She drove away, went shopping, and carried on as if the morning had ended behind her. What she didn't know was that her parents had already told police exactly who to look for, and the search teams were about to surround her. That information went out over the radio almost immediately. Patrol units began checking nearby roads, parking lots, and shopping areas around southeast Ocala. It didn't take long. Officers located a vehicle matching the description and forced it to stop.
I'm located. Keep coming.
That's 10-4.
Keep coming. Stop.
2964, 5709, 51 to him.
Sure. Turn around. Spin. Spin. Put both hands up. Face away. Backwards.
I think the detective was on his way to him, and I think the LP's on his way to him.
Inside the car sits 33-year-old Christina Adams, who appeared terrified and unaware of the whole situation.
All right, want over this way with me?
What's happening?
We'll explain that to you in a few. Get here real quick. You want to have a seat real quick? Let's go ahead and grab her sunglasses on. Yep.
At first, she didn't resist or ask why she was being arrested, as if she already knew. But sitting long enough made her think of multiple questions she wanted to ask.
Is there anything you can tell me about what's happening?
Is there anything what?
That you can tell me about what's happening?
No, the detective won't be talking with you. I don't really have much information.
Okay.
That's not my investigation.
Christina was separated and transported to the sheriff's office. At this stage, detectives were careful. They had a suspect, but they needed clarity on the timeline, motive, and intent. The goal was no longer just to confirm who had done this. It was to understand why it had happened and whether the violence had been planned or explosive. As the investigation moved indoors toward interview rooms and recorded statements, detectives believed they were about to hear a familiar story: panic, regret, excuses. What they didn't realize was that the interrogation would soon take a turn that no one in that room was prepared for. After the detectives had interviewed a few other people, it was finally Christina's turn as she sat waiting in the room. When the officers finally arrived, the questioning began.
Christina? I'm Detective Smith.
I'm Detective Ender. Yep, I brought you that water earlier.
Yeah.
Got your handcuffs sorted out.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep you in here. It's a little chilly in here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, trying to get some information about what happened this morning, so I'd like to talk to you. We've talked to a bunch of people. You know, you've been here for a while, so in that meantime, we haven't just been sitting around. We've been trying to put pieces together and get an idea of what happened this morning.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask you some questions and get some information from you.
The two officers were doing their best to come across as friendly as possible. They wanted to assure Christina that whatever information regarding her they had so far, they wouldn't believe it blindly until she answers with facts and truth.
Like I said, I'm trying to gather some information, and obviously something happened today, and I'm going to talk about that, and I need your complete honesty, okay? Because there's always two sides to every story, and a lot of times when we get one side, we're like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, but then we go talk to the other parties involved, and there's usually more to it than meets the eye with one party statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
They begin with asking standard routine questions like name and her phone number before moving on to more direct and important details, like what happened in the morning.
I usually have an alarm, either 5 or 5:45.
Okay, and what did you do?
I got up, I fed my cats, and I watched some movies, played some games on my phone. I'm in the middle of learning a new language on Duolingo. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Yeah, me and my wife are trying to learn to speak Valyrian from Game of Thrones.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I did that. I fed the cats. I put in a load of laundry, and then I came back and sat at the house and put on a movie, and then
Detectives noticed that instead of describing all her activities at once, since she was at home doing all these things, she explains too many details, which may be a sign that one person wants to take time to think what they want to say next.
And then Brenda was dropping off Annabelle to school, and she said that she had to get ice and go to Publix. And so I really wanted to see her, and we usually, she usually stays like Monday through Friday and then goes back to her mom's house for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't had that in a long time. It's been like we can only see each other like for little bits and pieces during the day.
Officers noticed there were a lot of pauses in between her statements. She seems to be thinking hard about the events that only happened a few hours earlier. If one is talking straight facts, they wouldn't need to stutter.
So this morning, were you communicating with Brenda, like through text or Facebook Messenger or something?
Messenger.
Okay. And you made arrangements to go to Publix?
Mm-hmm. I was going to meet her at Publix.
Okay. And did she come over to the house and you guys went there together, or how did you meet up? Like,
everything's very blurry.
Officers were now thinking Christine was trying to prove her presence with Brenda at Publix as an alibi. But as soon as the deputy asks her the follow-up questions, the way she got stuck, unable to answer, raised major red flags. She got into deep thinking before answering.
Okay, so she says that she was going to go to Publix or racetrack to get ice in Publix. And then after she left and dropped the kid off, she was like, why don't I just come over there? And so she came over, and I was in one of my depressions because, my record rate makes it very hard to get employed.
After a long pause, she decided to reveal that she went to Publix to get ice. Then she evaded the question of where she had been to a completely new topic. That didn't go unnoticed by detectives, as she suddenly started talking about depression and her job.
so what were your plans when you came back from Publix, when you were headed home? What were you going to do then?
Just switch the laundry.
Switch the laundry?
And go to her place. Well, go back to the car and then turn
Okay. All right.
What the deputy officer noted, Christina didn't mention her parents for once. Even at the time when she went back home, she was more concerned about laundry. It seemed she wanted to avoid talking about her parents as much as she could, but the officer had other plans. The mention of her parents shocked her so much that she remained silent for more than 15 seconds. The silence was deafening as the officers recorded her odd behavior.
It's been a few days.
It's been a few days. So I might have misheard when he asked you about specifically how the washer and dryer setup was. Is it actually in the main house, or is it
It's in the main house.
Okay, so you'd have to go to the main house where your parents live. You didn't see them then or anything?
It was now confirmed that Christina was indeed present at the house in the morning before she even left for Publix. As the laundry and washer she was so concerned about was at the main house, where her parents lived. She explained she had a brief conversation with her mother only. The officer found that Christina talks about her parents in two ways. Either she goes into deep thinking, stays silent, or, just like now, goes into too many unnecessary details. The reason the detective asks this specific question is because it was not just clothes, and the search team at the residence located something odd among the laundry, which would be revealed later in the investigation. Christine was washing her work gloves, even though she had previously claimed she was not going to work these days. Her statements were becoming more and more inconsistent, but the detectives were ready to confront her.
I don't want you to dig yourself into a deeper hole. When I came in here and asked you to get your side of the story, it's because I think there's more to this story than what I have so far, but I'll be honest with you. I've talked to your parents, okay? I've talked to other people. We're in the process of getting a search warrant for the house, for your vehicle, for phones, and there's things that we're going to find that are going to contradict what you're telling me, because I don't believe what you're telling me, okay? And I want you to give yourself the opportunity to be honest, because there has to be more side of the story. And what I want you to do is to give me, some understanding that you're not this cold-blooded person.
From the look of it, detectives were cornering Christina to make her confess, but that was not it. The officer was smart to let her know that she might have a way out. It was a strategy to make her confess a small part, or even admit she might have done it accidentally or due to some illness. The detective confronted her for not once asking about her parents' well-being during the whole interview, and that jolted Christina as she realized her mistake. She tried to explain the situation, but the officer was not buying it. She was on the edge, clearly.
I'm a sociopath, and I have a wild case of DID.
Okay.
And under extreme stress and emotion, other forces control my actions. And
Your emotions got the best of you today?
Christina was at her breaking point. She finally admits she might have acted upon emotion. In her defense, she said she had a case of DID, dissociative identity disorder, also called multiple personality disorder. So the detectives asked her to describe basically what her other personality saw her do that morning. Apparently, her father gave her 6 weeks' notice before 33-year-old Christina had to empty the house. That angered her, and it clearly didn't sit right with her, as she thought it was unfair that her brother would take her place, even though she was jobless. Later in the conversation, she described her appearance that morning, and what she was about to reveal next rang the alarm bells in the detective's head. As soon as she mentioned gloves, the detective remembered the ones she had put in the washer earlier. The same gloves she described as work gloves, except that she had no work to do these days. The detectives asked what happened when she put on the clothes. That's when the officers were able to hear the words they had waited so long to hear. Christina finally confessed that she had entered the room quietly, where her dad was sitting. The morning had just begun, so Richard was completely focused on the computer screen, unaware. His vicious daughter took advantage of it and came behind to stab him when he least expected it.
Describe this how you heard it.
Okay.
Tell us what you with. A knife? Where did you get the knife from?
I had one for self-defense.
Okay.
She had always kept a knife with her for self-defense, the same knife that claimed the life of her father, Richard Langanger. Her mother heard all the noise and rushed inside the room to stop her.
2 steps to your dad, and then you said 1 to your mom?
Yeah.
Describe to us the transition from your dad to your mom. Your dad was over by the computer. We already talked about that. How did you get over to your mom?
She heard the commotion. She came over and she's like, "What are you doing?" I don't know.
Christina was not only the cause of her father's death and her mother's fatal injuries, but her wife and kids' lives were also affected by her. In a way, she ended her life too, but she was not aware of it yet. The investigation teams were about to find the murder weapon and all the details of the evidence against her. They found the pieces of clothes she wore at the time of the murder in her washer, which she desperately tried to wash away, but failed. Prosecutors laid out a clear sequence of events beginning on September 16, 2022. An argument over being forced to move out, a violent attack inside the family home, and a deliberate attempt to walk away as if nothing had happened. The jury heard how Richard Langanger identified his own daughter during the 911 call before losing consciousness, and how Sally Langanger survived long enough to provide critical details to investigators. The evidence left little room for doubt. On April 16, 2025, the jury returned its verdict. Christina Adams was found guilty of first-degree premeditated for the father, Richard Langanger, and attempted first-degree for the attack on her mother, Sally Langanger. The following day, on April 17, 2025, sentencing was handed down. The judge imposed 2 life sentences, 1 for each conviction, ensuring Christina Adams would spend the rest of her life in prison. In the end, there was no twist left to uncover. What began as a family argument on a September morning ended nearly 3 years later in a courtroom. A crime carried out inside the place meant to be safest, by someone the victims trusted most, left damage that no verdict could undo. Cases like this force an uncomfortable question. How well do we really know the people closest to us?